Howdy folks, Corky Duke Farminator here. Come with me if you want to farm. This is Farming Simulator 22, AMP Grain Farm, Prairie Farm, Michigan 4X, Part 21, Bravo. I lost my internet, so I'm back, but that's what happened before. I'm going to pull him out of there. You know what? This is where it goes anyway. Oh, it's almost full. It is full. Okay. Alrighty, put some water in that. Somehow we just lost the internet. I don't know why, but it happens periodically. Really annoying. Alright.
That plays by your rules. Earn up to 5% cash back with unlimited cashback offers. No monthly fee, no minimum balance.
All right.
It's played already. Already started. Wrathful. Charm. Nervous is best. Let's toss up here. Turns for all the pencils. Speed on you can stack right. Stuff in German. Eventually it'll force the tank. It's spray tree now. You can get up to the monster and take it. Or to the tank back.
Come on, come on! Come on! Fuck! Oh wow, that was a nasty round. Oh, no, I was watching Katie hit 2 infantry hit. Artillery infantry went there. Damn.
So we don't have to take that step today. A little bit. So that's too many minutes. It's too many. It's much to do.
Borrowing from your buddies? That's not the vibe. If you need cash, don't awkwardly ask.
Hey Austin, how you doing?
Ask Mike his confidence hits different.
Thanks for joining the stream.
Solves under his tongue, works in 15 minutes on average, and can last for up to 36 hours. Prairie is the first ED.
This is great getting to figure out how to use the train system. Alright everybody, they're trying to take this country over, but I promise we will not let them. Today is America's 250th birthday. And on America's 250th birthday, we find ourselves battling with the same insidious, white nationalist, neo-Nazi forces that have plagued America for its entire history as a nation. On screen now, you see Patriot Front on the train in Washington, D.C. This white supremacist neo-Nazi group named Patriot Front is trying to hijack America's 250th birthday, trying to hijack July 4th, which happy July 4th to everybody watching, and they're trying to pervert it for their own insidious far-right reasons. They're trying to push their neo-Nazi ideology onto Americans in Washington, D.C., and Americans are holding their ground. This only adds to the absolute chaos that is taking place at Donald Trump's National Fair, which we'll cover in just one moment. And at Donald Trump's National Fair, the heat is rising, the crowds are scarce, the Ferris wheel is broken once again due to electricity problems, and it was likely a money laundering scheme entirely. It's very likely Donald Trump put on this fair so he can launder money to his donors, his aides, his allies, and hijack the celebration we were supposed to have. So I want to paint a picture of an America that is in the process of being hijacked by white nationalists, but is not fully gone. I promise you, we can continue to push back, continue to claim our country in our own direction, and create social harmony. I mean, when I think of America, I vision a country where different groups, different races, different genders, sexual orientations, religions can all live in social harmony and work towards their own interests with a shared institution that protects us all from tyranny or protects us all from hate. What's happening in Washington, D.C. today is a concerted effort to hijack America's birthday and turn it into a white nationalist, Christian nationalist celebration. But I promise you, we are not going to let it happen. This photo on screen now, taken by Reuters, is a rather dark photo. You see a bunch of Patriot Front white supremacists riding the train in D.C., and on the train, you also see a singular, lone black woman sitting in the crowd, holding the line. And I know this photo is very, very just dark for many reasons. We have white nationalists trying to intimidate people, but I also want to say this. I think this photo encapsulates what America is, what the struggle of America is, more so than anything Donald Trump or his goons have done in the past 10 days or even the past 10 years. On screen now, you see the type of resistance, the type of defiance from the sole black woman that defines the struggle of America and the struggle that America has had over the past 250 years. Obviously, I'm a white dude, I can't speak on behalf have with Black Americans, but it's very, very obvious that Black Americans have been pushed down by this overall white supremacist country for the past 250 years. Slavery plagued our country for the first half of it. Even after slavery, we had Jim Crow laws. Even after that, after all of this fight and this battle, we still have white nationalists who want to claim that America is a white country. This is not true. America is not a country based off of any race, based off of any religion, based off of any sexual orientation, any gender. It is not a country for men. It is not a country for women. America is a pluralistic society in which different groups can advocate for their interests and live in social harmony. And this strips away that social harmony. These same Patriot Front losers want to deport all immigrants in our country. That is antithetical to what America was built on. I mean, hell, 27% of working physicians in the United States are immigrants. They want to take away 1/4 of our doctors in time when there is already a doctor shortage. Patriot Front was also walking through the neighborhoods and the streets of Washington, D.C. Look at, they're holding Confederate flags. They're holding flags and doing chants that are inherently white nationalist. And I don't know, am I confused here, or is it entirely anti-American to be holding a Confederate flag in any situation ever? The Confederacy was a country that split from America and declared war on all of the facets of America that we're supposed to love, like inclusivity or belonging or diversity or the ability to innovate. They declared war on America, and now they're holding the flags of our enemy country that we beat in a battle. I find that to be absolutely despicable. Here's the group of masked men at Union Station after they rode the train, holding flags and doing chants to, number one, reclaim the country in their eyes. Number two, get rid of all immigrants. And number three, celebrate the Confederacy. These are all disgusting, despicable, anti-American facets. And you know, I'm getting a little bit more during this video, but it is America's movement. It is America's movement. I will go as far as saying Donald Trump is protecting and helping the people who are white nationalists in Washington, D.C. The entire national fair that Donald Trump has put on over the past 10 days, believe it or not, has been a cover to inject white nationalism into America. I made a video about this earlier, but they're literally using our taxpayer dollars to send around freedom trucks. These freedom trucks are historical revisionism, trying to paint slavery as not that bad, trying to paint America as a Christian nation, and lying about what it means to be an American. Believe it or not, separation of church and state is fundamental to what America is. We don't want to become one of these theocratic regimes that is based on religion that we're supposed to dislike. I don't want to be a country like Israel, where we promote one specific religion. I don't want to be like these Middle Eastern countries that oftentimes abuse and hurt people who don't follow their religions. That is not the type of country that we should be. That is the type of country that they are trying to move us towards. In this photo right here, you see another singular lone woman, this time a white woman, surrounded by a bunch of masked Patriot Front people. I don't even like to use the name Patriot Front because these people are not patriots. It's a front for the least patriotic people in America, and they can't even show their faces. Is it verified to say these people are Muslims? How are you going to claim that you're reclaiming America and you're the next wave of America, but you're too scared to even show your face on the streets? Here's another photo of the white nationalist Patriot Front people walking through Union Station, holding up their fist. You see the National Guard next to them, just allowing it to happen. I'm not implying that the National Guard should get in the fight right here, but I'm pretty sure what Trump says is going to mobilize the National Guard to fight crime in Washington, D.C., and then we have hateful white supremacists in Washington, D.C. who are being ignored by these same peacekeepers that Trump is supposed to be sending out. It feels like Donald Trump is creating the cover and the permission structure for these white nationalists. When it comes to Trump's fair, the Ferris wheel is currently shut down. We're going to return in one moment to the Patriot Front people, but I want to show you what's happening inside the building. I have been asking you to appreciate these videos and appreciate us holding the line and sticking up for America. It would mean the world if we drop a like on this video below. It's entirely free and it just helps boost the truth at a time when it feels like these right-wingers are taking over the algorithms and taking over the streets even. Take a look at this.
Good morning, my friends. Even if you don't plan to come on the National Mall, I want to mention this. I've seen a lot of runners this morning trying to do, that scenic 4th of July run on the mall. You can't do that this year because it's all blocked off with security access points. So your best bet if you want something like that is to come down Constitution, but don't forget too, it's really hot out. So earlier the better, or just maybe a workout inside. If you're trying to come to National Mall, State Pier doesn't open up until noon. That entrance is at 7.
It's entirely a mess. It's getting shut down. People are getting crowded out. There's nowhere for people to eat and chill. And speaking of Christian nationalism, there's nothing wrong with baptisms. I'm not saying that. Don't mistake me. But they're holding baptisms at the National Fair while they have all of this pro-Jesus memorabilia. Again, let me be clear here. There is nothing wrong with being a Christian. There is nothing wrong with liking Jesus. There's nothing wrong with having a sign that says "Eat Prayer." None of this on its own is something that offends me. I mean, as an American, I'm okay with people being whatever religion they want, but where it becomes a problem is when you try to force this type of religion onto other people, force it down their throats, and turn America 250 into an inherently religious celebration. But America is not an inherently religious country. America is a country that allows a difference in perspectives. For example, my grandpa immigrated to the United States from Syria in the late 80s. Since then, he has built a business in Northwest Indiana that benefits people, that helps people, that provides people the type of care that they need. There are so many doctors, dentists, heart surgeons, just where I grew up in Northwest Indiana that are immigrants. And the reason I'm saying this is because that is the beauty of America. A Muslim man was able to move from Syria at a time when things weren't too hot there in the late 80s. And he was able to move to a country where he built a family. I mean, he probably didn't expect his grandson to be running a media company, a media channel across all social medias. That is a type of beautiful thing that America is able to create. And there is beauty in America, don't get me wrong. I don't want to be one of those people that's constantly just railing against America and tearing it down. I've talked about a lot of things throughout this video that are hopeful in America, but this on screen is not hopeful.
Sets of runs to score points. On your turn, draw a card, lay down bells, and discard to end. First player to reach 500 points wins.
All their content. This is gonna be chaos, baby. We don't care. We're going to Young Washington. For America. Happy birthday. Young Washington. In theaters July 4th.
Be right back.
I'm sorry, but these people are such insufferable chud losers. These people are absolute fucking losers. They go out in public with their face covered with Confederate flags, then they march through the street trying to intimidate people who are sitting there solely. So at the beginning of this video I said that this photo actually gives me chills. I think this photo encapsulates America very well. And again, please don't misconstrue what I'm saying as I'm saying that I like the fact that there's patriotism. I'm not trying to say that. What I'm saying is the resistance, the defiance, the opposition shown in this photo kind of summarizes the entire 250-year battle of America. The entire story of America is one that at first was supposed to be built on equality. It wasn't. We had slavery. Women couldn't vote. If you weren't a white male that owned land and had wealth, you were basically screwed in America. But over the past 250 years, we have seen the circle of human rights expand and expand and expand. Slavery went away. Jim Crow laws went away. And obviously there's still a lot of racism and systemic racism. But then gay people gained the ability to get married. Women have been able to vote since the 19th Amendment passed in about 1920. Over and over and over, we have seen America slowly move into a country where the circle of Christ is expanding. I heard Obama talking about this when I was at his opening for the presidential center. Former President Obama was saying one of the most proud moments of his presidency was seeing the circle of human dignity expand and seeing that gay people were then allowed to get married. This entire struggle that defines America can basically be seen in this photo. Masked men who call themselves patriots but are actually losers, standing on a bus trying to basically intimidate this black woman. And this black woman sits there, holds firm, and continues to be herself, continues to operate and live in a country that is supposed to protect people, not scare people. And again, one more thing, Donald Trump is feeding into all of this. Donald Trump's style of politics, the way he speaks about black Americans, his cabinet even, I mean honestly, the more apt person would probably be Stephen Miller. Stephen Miller is the one that controls a lot of this white nationalist rhetoric coming out of the White House. And Trump co-signs it and uses it himself, but there are some dark, insidious forces inside the White House that want to take America back, repress America. Kash Patel, the FBI director, was recently saying that Patriot Front isn't even real, and that Patriot Front is essentially a left-wing PSYOP organization that left-wingers are trying to pretend like a right-wing organization. It's all such BS. This is a very real movement. Around trying to intimidate America in a very real manner. Here was the security at America 250. It feels like Donald Trump does not care and incentivizes these Patriot Front people, these Patriot Front losers, while also turning his own fare into an absolute hellish shit show. You get more protection in DC if you are a white nationalist Patriot Front loser, than you are if you are an actual fair goer that entrusted your life in Trump's hands. Trump and his team are reportedly panicking and raging over the fact that there is likely going to be a tiny crowd at his event tonight. A tiny, tiny crowd for somebody who is regressing America. So, I mean, let me show you this video of how dumb these freaks are. We call this LARPing. It's a live action role play. These people don't actually have a bone in their body that would live up to what they claim to be, but they like to walk around in masks and act tough. Look at these freaks not able to figure out how to even work the metro, and the guy who's working at the metro goes, guys, figure it out, get through it. Sorry to be an asshole here, I'm a skinny guy too. Look at this scrawny guy walking through after he couldn't figure out how to use the dog. You're not reclaiming our country. These types of hateful people are emboldened by the President of the United States. Here's a line developing out of the Great American Fair to mention how Trump supporters were making sure Americans want to go. But look at the signs they're holding up. Melania equals beautiful. Michelle equals handsome. Okay, so these Republicans hate immigrants until it's Melania and Trump. So on that note, we need to hold the line. Now is the time to push back and protect our country. You know, I was just out with some friends trying to celebrate the 4th of July. We were getting some mimosas for lunch, and while walking back, we got rained on really, really heavily. So that's why I'm incredibly wet. It's not sweat or anything, but it's got rained on. And this celebration of July 4th that I was trying to have with my friends, which is the chill brunch or whatever, but we were just talking about what it truly means to be American. What it truly means to live in a country that creates social harmony, creates opportunity for everybody, no matter where you were born, no matter who you are. That is the ideal America that we have. If you're an immigrant because of an awful situation and you try to seek asylum in the United States, you should be able to build a great life here, so long as you are a member that is contributing to society, paying your taxes, and not committing crimes. It is really that simple. And these are frameworks that we're going to continue to develop on the Adam Hofer feed, but I am sick of these far-right neo-Nazi losers trying to hijack the celebration. It is time to hold the line. It is time to hold the line against Donald Trump sending freedom trucks around the country to indoctrinate people with ahistorical lessons. It's time to hold the line against this entire affair that is a money laundering scheme to promote Christian nationalism. I hope I painted a very vivid picture of a celebration of 250 that is trying to be hijacked. They're trying to hijack it from the far right, but we will not let them. We will hold strong. We will continue to vote. We will continue to celebrate the America that we know, that we love, and that we want to see. I love you all. I'll see you all in the next video. Peace out.
It's called Blue Chew. Blue Chew is crazy. Comes in a little gold package like this. And let me tell you, you will outperform anything you've ever done in your life. This stuff, it's not just physical. It helps you mentally connect to the situation. You will not be sorry. So what you do is you go to bluechew.com and get you some. I've been married 25 years. Okay, I'm inside, but I'm gonna let Coco tell you for herself.
Guys, this stuff works. It's Coco approved.
It's Coco approved.
Blue Chew.
It makes it do what it do. Stop playing.
Watch exactly how Representative Jason Crow, drawing upon his own experience as an Army infantry officer, meticulously backs Secretary of Defense Pete Hegseth into an undeniable corner, ultimately forcing him on the congressional record that he cannot reconcile his foundational military training with his own recent statements.
No, their political affiliation was never a concern to me. Because it's important that everybody feel included and that people aren't excluded, correct? That would be antithetical. I'm sure my platoon contained Republicans, Democrats, and Independents, and I had no idea what their affiliation was. Okay, that was actually my next question, so I appreciate you answering that. You led your unit in a counterinsurgency environment, and you interacted with civilians, correct? Interacted with members of the civilian population, and you were in fact a coined instructor, counterinsurgency instructor, correct? In Afghanistan in 2011 and 2012, I was the senior counterinsurgency instructor. And you signed off on a manual. There's actually a counterinsurgency manual that you signed off on and helped create. Your name was on that manual. We were a part of creating a lot of content at the Point Academy, yes. Remember this portion of the manual? It says if you've killed 2 innocents, you've set yourself back more than you've moved forward. Do you still agree with that? I would have to take a look at the manual, but obviously no one in warfare is seeking to kill innocents. Okay.
What's that?
Because it's important to show why we're different from the enemy. Because we're not the enemy, right? We're different from our adversary. Would you agree with that? We have different morals and different values. We are not the enemy. We have different morals and we have different values. We have a code, a uniform code of military justice. The answer to that is yes. Formations. You're not trying to compare us to Al-Qaeda and ISIS, are you? I know the code of the United States military, Army, that I signed up. You can't tell me whether we're different. I can't. You're not willing to say we're different. Okay, thank you. Sure. That's why I'm trying to reconcile the fact that we learned many of the same lessons as platoon leaders. About unit cohesion, making sure that people were included, that we didn't ask people's political affiliation, that we interacted respectfully with civilian populations, that what a leader says matters, that the tone you set matters, that we are not the enemy, that we are different from them, we lead differently, we have different morals. How can I reconcile that experience and those lessons learned from Lieutenant Hegseth to now Secretary Hegseth, where you say things like what you just saw here, making us equivalent on the same standards as our adversaries, doing the same things that ISIS and Al-Qaeda would do. How can you possibly reconcile that? I can't. And just the other day down at Fort Bragg in our beloved 82nd Airborne Division, sitting there where we politicize the military and pull our paratroopers into politics, booing elected officials, booing politicians with whom we disagree. It's antithetical to our values, and you, sir, have changed.
To truly understand the gravity of this remarkable exchange, one must first recognize the architectural brilliance of the interrogation itself. Representative Jason Crow does not begin his line of questioning by launching a predictable partisan attack.
nor does he rely on fabricated political standards to trap Secretary Hegseth. Instead, he initiates a masterful cross-examination rooted entirely in shared professional credibility and common ground. The congressman establishes early on that both men began their respective careers on identical paths, noting that they both served as infantry officers. They both held the vital responsibility of being platoon leaders, and crucially, they both deployed their platoons into complex, high-stakes combat environments defined by counterinsurgency operations. By anchoring the conversation in this shared history, Crow creates an atmosphere of mutual military understanding. He emphasizes that there are exceedingly few environments that serve as better proving grounds for true leadership than deploying a platoon in a counterinsurgency environment. From this foundation of mutual respect and shared operational reality, Crow explicitly asks to transport the room back in time, away from the current political theater of Washington, D.C., and back to the days of Lieutenant Hegseth and Lieutenant Crow. This deliberate framing is not merely conversational. It is a highly calculated rhetorical strategy designed to lock the secretary into agreeing with fundamental, undisputed military principles before introducing any controversy. Every experienced military leader understands that a unit's effectiveness is inextricably linked to its internal cohesion, and Crow prompts Hegseth to confirm this basic tenet. Hegseth readily agrees, affirming that unit cohesion is indeed a profoundly important element of leadership. However, the exchange rapidly enters fascinating psychological territory when Crow introduces the concept of making sure all members of a unit feel included in that team. Crow posits that part of maintaining cohesion is ensuring that members feel capable, united in their mission, and genuinely included as part of the operational family. Hegseth's reaction to this specific phrasing is incredibly telling, as he accepts the underlying substance of the principle while visibly and deliberately rejecting the label. Hegseth explicitly states that he wouldn't use the word inclusion, preferring instead to say that the soldiers were cohering as a team. This micro-interaction highlights a broader cultural dynamic, showing how Hegseth recoils from the specific word inclusion because, in modern contemporary political discourse, that term has become deeply entangled with a specific set of cultural debates. He takes this opportunity to volunteer his unprompted, staunch opinion that our diversity is our strength is the single dumbest phrase in military history, offering his preferred alternative phrase that unity is our strength. He emphasizes that unity among members must exist completely despite any differences in their backgrounds or race. What makes Crow's strategy so extraordinarily effective here is his complete refusal to take the bait. Crow does not engage in a petty semantic argument over the word inclusion versus unity. He simply agrees with Hegseth's reframing immediately and without any friction, noting that words and setting the proper tone are indeed essential parts of leadership. Crow is perfectly willing to let the vocabulary fight pass because he recognizes that both men actually agree on the foundational principle, which is that a military platoon absolutely must function as a unified, cohesive team, regardless of the individual, racial, or ideological backgrounds of its composite members. Crow is playing a much longer game, building toward a far more consequential revelation. Having established the supreme importance of a unified team focused entirely on the mission, Crow gently pivots to the mechanics of how a leader actually achieves that unity. He asks Hegseth a seemingly simple question about his time leading troops, specifically asking if he ever explicitly told his platoon members his political affiliation, or if he ever asked them for theirs. This exchange establishes a highly specific and vital leadership commitment directly on the record, using Hegseth's own historical conduct. Hegseth confirms that his political affiliation, as well as the affiliations of his soldiers, were never a point of discussion or concern. He acknowledges that his platoon undoubtedly contained a mixture of Republicans, Democrats, and independents, but he had absolutely no idea what their specific affiliations were, because asking such questions would risk excluding people and be antithetical to his duties. By securing this admission, Crow locks in Hegseth's own historical philosophy of strict political neutrality within the military ranks. Hegseth himself validates the core operational recognition that an effective military unit simply cannot function properly, nor maintain its lethal edge if its individual members are being judged, sorted, or treated differently based upon their private political beliefs. Crow gets this commitment recorded cleanly and with Hegseth's full, unhesitating agreement before moving to the centerpiece of the interrogation. With the foundational principles of cohesion and neutrality firmly established, Crow transitions to the specific operational realities of the wars they fought. He brings up Hegseth's interactions with civilian populations in Iraq and his specific role in Afghanistan. This is where Crow's extensive preparation truly shines, as he introduces a specific document to build his ultimate case. Crow establishes that Hegseth was not merely a junior officer who happened to deploy to a combat zone, rather, Hegseth served as the senior counterinsurgency instructor at a military academy in Afghanistan during the years 2011 and 2012. In this high level, Hegseth was directly responsible for teaching the complex doctrine of counterinsurgency.
right now. Pete Buttigieg, the first openly gay confirmed cabinet member in United States history, the former Secretary of Transportation, someone who many Democrats hope will be a contender for the Democratic presidential nomination in 2028. He today announced in a post on Substack that he and Chaston and their kids, his family, were the targets of a, quote, cruel, politically motivated hoax. That's how he describes it. He goes on to tell the whole story. An anonymous caller called Child Protective Services on his family and made false allegations about him. Buttigieg describes it as akin to swatting. Swatting is when someone calls 911 and makes a fake, false report that suggests an imminent threat, like a mass shooting, something that leads law enforcement to swarm or swat someone's home. In Buttigieg's post, he describes what happened to him when a worker with Child Protective Services came to the door. He writes this, quote, "Someone decided to hurt our family this week. I'm furious and I want to share what happened. You've probably heard of swatting. It's a cruel and dangerous kind of hoax that has started happening more frequently in recent years. Someone anonymously calls 911 with a false report of imminent danger, such as a hostage situation at the home of a public figure. Law enforcement swarms the house, guns drawn, terrifying the unsuspecting homeowner and family, and sometimes even leading to deaths or injuries in the confusion. It's happened to dozens of lawmakers, judges, celebrities, and others. When I was in the cabinet, someone attempted to do this to our home, but fortunately the hoax was quickly detected. It's become enough of a problem that the FBI now has a dedicated database to track such incidents. Now imagine that same concept, but with Child Protective Services instead of a SWAT team. Hadn't thought of that? Me neither. Until a few days ago when a police officer and a CPS worker showed up at our home and politely asked to speak with me. I showed them in, invited them on the deck so that we could hear each other over the barking dog, and asked what was going on. They explained that there had been an allegation against me, that it concerned our 4-year-old twins, and that a forensic interview had been arranged for the children the following day. I could not be present at the children's interview, nor could any family member sit in. Afterwards, they would come back and interview me, and only then would they tell me anything about the nature of the allegation. I was bewildered and troubled, but I tried to stay calm. I'm used to any number of falsehoods, attacks, and serious problems being thrown my way. What I did not understand was what could have led to this kind of visit. Then, the Child Protective Services worker told me something that made my stomach turn. I was not to be alone around the children, at least until the interview took place the next day. They asked if I had relatives nearby, or could perhaps stay at a hotel for the night. The officer and the CPS worker wanted to see the children. I invited them to stay until Chaston, who was out running errands, preparing to pick the twins up from summer camp for the day, returned home. When he pulled up in the family Jeep, the kids bounded into the house, looking curiously at the two guests. They were courteous and professional, inviting the kids to inspect the officer's police car, which fascinated them, of course, while the grown-ups talked in the driveway. We agreed that the kids would stay at their grandparents' house after our family dinner that night.
What the hell are you doing?
The 24 hours until they returned are among the darkest hours of my life. I tried to get my head around the idea.
It's really a simple concept.
Something so
Little
serious.
square here. You just fertilize what hasn't been fertilized
I
yet.
consented to have them interviewed by strangers.
Very simple
without knowing where
concept.
The accusation had come from, or even what it contained. Many times over the years, I've been denounced, yelled at, protested, threatened, and heckled. I've been through political attacks in office, death threats in public life, and rocket attacks in war. But this is the ugliest thing that has happened to me since my career in service began. After spending a sleepless night wondering what the hell was going on, and spending half the day anxiously picturing what our children were going through without their parents, I waited until the appointment time for my interview finally came. With the kids back at their grandparents' house after their appointment in town, and Chasman having been asked to wait upstairs, the officer and CPS worker sat down at our kitchen table with me and my new lawyer. Then, for the first time, the officer explained what the allegation actually was. An anonymous caller had contacted CPS. The caller said that he had spoken to a woman who claimed to have met me at a conference several years ago in Alabama, where she said I told her I had committed unspeakable violent crimes, and the caller believed my children were at risk. That was all. The officer questions. He asked if I had been to the town where the woman claimed she met me. I have not. The officer made clear that he believed this was politically motivated, and I said it would not, and he said it would not be referred to a prosecutor. Nothing in the forensic interview with the children, which was conducted by trained personnel, that led to concerns. After the officer spoke, the CPS worker likewise indicated she had not found anything to substantiate the allegation, though her process would take a bit longer to be formally completed. I no longer needed to avoid being around my children unsupervised. Chaston was invited to come back downstairs and hear the same information that had been shared with me. Then, for standard procedure, she verified that there was adequate food in our kitchen and asked to take a look at the kids' bedroom. After the officer, the CPS worker, and the lawyers all left, Chaston and I hugged each other as tightly as we have any time since the day our son was put on life support as a critically ill infant just weeks after the adoption. We went to get the kids, had dinner with them and their grandparents, brought them home, and gave them the most normal bedtime we could, with a few more bedtime books than usual. Then we went and sat under the light at our kitchen table, trying to begin to process our feelings. Buttigieg goes on to say that the police officer he encountered made it clear, as we read from the passage, that it was politically motivated and that any allegations against him would not be referred to a prosecutor or investigation. He adds this, quote, "I don't know who did this or exactly what prompted them to try. It's not lost on me that this happened soon after we shared photos of our family on social media for Father's Day, or that this occurred during a month meant to make families like ours feel welcome and safe. We're used to nasty, hateful, and sometimes violent things being said about us, and even about our family. But this is the first time someone managed to invade our lives like this and drag our children into it. Meanwhile, we'll continue to do our work, supporting and speaking out for causes we believe in, according to our values. We'll continue to stand up against the cruelty and corruption of the people in power today, and I'll keep making the case for a better future in our country through a better kind of politics. We cannot let American politics keep going in this direction, and we must not all go on as if it's acceptable for this kind of thing to be part of the cost of entering public service. I want to bring into our conversation and our coverage former Assistant Special Agent in Charge of the FBI, National Security and Intelligence Analyst Michael Feinberg. Also joining us, co-founder and executive director of Protect Democracy, Ian Basson is here, and political analyst, host of the Roll Up podcast, Tim Miller joins us. Tim, I read this with the feeling of this could be any of us. This is a tactic, and their tactics are never sort of customized for any one of their political enemies. They are usually rolled out and scaled to all of their political enemies. And I think what Pete and Chasten decided to do by publishing this today is maybe put it under such a bright Klieg light that people know this is happening to people like Pete and Chasten. But what a horrific experience for their kids and their family.
And hard to imagine. I have this rage boiling inside of me, having to listen to you read that for the last few minutes. I'm trying to gather my thoughts, but I'm thinking about the idea of being separated from your young child for a night by the government because a cruel, insane person called the police and said you were a monster, and then to think of having to have the police come and interview your 4-year-old, my child's 8 now, but I'm just trying to think about that, and ask these invasive personal questions because you are a person that is in the public eye, because you commit to public service, like that, this is the punishment, you have to deal with that in a free country, and it's totally unacceptable. You mentioned twice the comment about how this isn't being referred to a prosecutor. Maybe there's something else that just wasn't included in Pete's update there, but I think it should be referred to a prosecutor to prosecute the person that made the phone call. Hopefully that is ongoing. I just wanted to raise that as what I think should be the appropriate response to this, which is to prosecute the person that inflicted this on their family. And you need to go to politics and democracy on this, but the thing that just came to mind listening to all this, and having been a former Republican, is there's this big movement a few years ago going after families like Pete's and mine called Moms for Liberty. And it was this parents' rights movement, talking about how they didn't want their kids to have to learn about gay people in schools. And that's how they framed it. That this was about liberties, about parents' rights. We shouldn't have things that we don't want forced upon our kids by the government. And the biggest picture, and there's nothing wrong with that sentiment, a lot of their tactics were gross. Then what an example of an infringement upon liberty is this. And I'm not holding my breath, but you would hope that there would be bipartisan condemnation of this. I think about the infringement on the liberty of their family and their children, that the government would come in and separate them from their 4-year-old kids and invade their kitchen and ask personal questions to their children without them around, just because one sicko went phone call. I mean, it's totally against how things should work in a free country, and I'm happy that Pete spoke out. And like you said, there should be real concerns about copycats here. The swatting thing is something that I hadn't heard about before 2015, and I know a lot of people who have been swatted, and so you do worry that this is something that expands.
It's time for Operation We're going to go see you in Washington theaters this 4th of July. Now they expect us to walk through the front door and pay $30 for 2 tickets, but we're going to take it by surprise and sign an angel for $15 and get 2 free tickets to Young Washington.
Plus 2 tickets to every Angel movie coming to theaters. We're talking The Brink of War, Runner, Angel and the Bad Man, Drummer Boy, Hershey, and Zero AD.
And those are just the ones coming out this year. Those tickets aren't free with the Angels whole library. You know it, for just $15 a month. That's the American $250 offer.
Let's storm the theater!
With Angel tickets for Young Washington. Celebrate American $250 for Angel. Get instant streaming access and 2 tickets to Young Washington. Theaters July 4th.
TRT, started Marsman. Got leaner than I ever did on injections. 4 years on TRT, weekly injections, constant blood work, and shrunken balls. And you know what? I still have the belly. My testosterone was high on paper, but I was converting a good portion of it to estrogen because TRT doesn't address that. It just floods your system and hopes for the best. I got Marsman from the guy in my gym. He showed me his blood work. He said it was 2 natural. higher than my medicated levels. I transitioned off TRT and started Marsman. Here's the difference. Marsman doesn't just raise testosterone, it blocks the conversion to estrogen. It lowers SHBG, so more testosterone is actually usable. It reduces cortisol, so your body stops storing fat from stress. Tomcat Ali at 1,000 milligrams, Shilajit at 400 milligrams, boron shows significantly reduced excess estrogen. 3 months later, testosterone at 680, natural. Belly fat finally responding, and my body is producing its own testosterone again, instead of being dependent on the needle. Clinic keeps calling, I keep declining. Before you commit to needles forever, try what your body can do naturally. Marsman has a 90-day guarantee. Get your free gifts, free shipping, and 50% off for life.
Tim, you're right about where the crime may have happened, and Pete addresses that. So let me read that part of it. Pete Buttigieg writes this, quote, "To be clear, making a false report of this kind is a crime. That's as it should be, both to protect the innocent from false accusations and to preserve the integrity of a process designed to protect children from harm. I don't know how much we can do about it, but so help me God, if there's any way to press civil or criminal charges over this, we will. Not just for our own sakes, but to draw a line that I thought everybody already recognized. Do not mess with someone's kids." Michael Feinberg, your thoughts?
Yeah, this is horrific on a few levels. The most important and most basic level, of course, is what happened to Mr. Buttigieg and his family. Pete chasing their kids should have never been put through this. Unfortunately, once that call was made, the die is sort of cast. Municipalities in most states, police do not have the discretion not to follow up an allegation of child abuse without a forensic interview. It sounds here like the police knew this was BS from the start and acted with as much kid gloves as they could in the situation, but the family never should have known the situation, and that leads to what makes it, I think, on a different level, which is our society is now at a point where this is just something that happens. You can support a political position on which there is a wide diversity of views, whatever that position is, and there are entire swaths of the population that think it's okay in response to disagreeing with you to call a SWAT team onto your house in the middle of the night, or to make egregiously false accusations about how you treated the most vulnerable members of your family. This is disgusting. It is sick, and it undermines the very premise of our democracy, that people can have a plurality of opinions on different issues without having to worry that their opponents are going to resort to violence or aggression. And I think we've crossed that. You know, one of Tim's colleagues published a piece yesterday talking about a large portion of the electorate that now statistically has shown it doesn't believe in democracy. It doesn't believe that people should have different views. And when you start to sacrifice the belief in the underlying rules of society, the sort of live and let live, laissez-faire attitude we have traditionally taken to each other, it becomes a lot easier for you to then violate with impunity the rules of that society. And I very much fear, because I have zero hope that any Republicans are going to speak out against this, I very much fear that this is going to become a problem.
I just want to read and be really specific about where the political motives were identified. They came from law enforcement, and Pete Buttigieg writes about this. He says, quote, "The officer made clear that he believed this was politically motivated." So that's what Pete Buttigieg is passing along in Bassett. So law enforcement that has to make this horrible visit, separate parents from their kids, subject 2 4-year-olds to an invasive interview session away from their parents and any adults they know, says to the target of the this effort that he, quote, believes it was politically motivated.
Yeah, I mean, first my heart goes out to Pete and Chaston and their family. I've known Pete probably almost 20 years, and you'd be hard-pressed to find a more thoughtful and kind, public-minded person. And I think it's not surprising that he speaks to the tragedy that has happened to his family here, but also to the broader implications when he gets to the end about it. This shouldn't be the consequence for raising your hand and not to serve the public, and that's the real danger here, is that we're going to get to a place where, you know, sensible people don't want to step up and serve the public because there's no cost of that. Artificial wellness. And the other thing that's really important is wellness. We should really, as a country, the person who bears primary responsibility for this is the person who made that call. It's the nature of trust to assess the prosecutor. But there's also a sickness that this is indicative of. But as we made in our society for which, you know, for parents have to be the antidotes. It's going to take all of this to take the temperature down to turn the reduction down, because as we know, if we're not is the whole it is raging just for sure. If we continue this to this direction, it is going to get worse for the entire society. We would ideally be living in a country where we would have a leader and leaders in a country who has had to stay with stewards actually in a better direction. Unfortunately, we have that right now, but so it's up to us. We have to be the leaders who steer us in a better direction. And I think that's what people call us to do too.
Tim, I'll give you the last word on this.
That's what we need.
That's something that I think everyone appreciates and public perpetrators of better answers right now. It's a really different instinct, to say the least. So you can just laugh at the story, but you can imagine things like that. This is, I think you guys can pull around this, and you can put things on there. The emotions that make the world is better. This is painful for societies. Beautiful about our country is that you get to, you know, express, you get to live out life in these socials and have beliefs that you choose as long as you're not harming anyone. If you're contributing to the community and you can go to whatever church you want, or whatever silly politics you want, or you know, whatever you want to do. This type of action tears it down. And it says that to intimidate and use the state to intimidate you if you insert if you're gay, if you're participate in that's how I like this. That guys come to the door and bang on your door and intimidate you if you're not doing things right. And I think that's a very scary place to go. And it's particularly unfortunate in this case.
This broke right before we came on the air, so thank you all for scrambling the jets and helping us cover it. Michael Feinberg, you'll be back in the next hour. Tim and Ian, you stick around. We have our other top story of the day, which is truly insane. It's a new level of whitewashing, if that even applies, coming from the Trump White House, looking to normalize and launder their unprecedented levels of corruption. We'll show you how J.D. Vance tried to spin Nixon and lower the bar for himself and his administration, plus more reaction to the Supreme Court. We are officially at the you can't make this bleep stuff up phase of the Donald Trump story. For Trump and his band of sycophants, projection has become one of the core governing philosophies. Accuse everyone in Washington of being corrupt and criminal, and then when the evidence points back at your conduct being corrupt and criminal or worse, try to rewrite the standard itself. That's what happened when J.D. Vance attempted to lower the bar of corruption last night, whitewashing one of the biggest political scandals in our country's history.
I'm actually fascinated by Nixon as a character in history. I think that his historical legacy is enjoying a bit of renaissance, but I think deservedly so. As I joked with Robert backstage, if Watergate happened tomorrow, it would be like a 12-hour news story. the idea that it would have taken down a presidency is crazy. And by the way, if you look at the story of how the deep state took down Richard Nixon, it's not all that different from what the same groups of people, the same institutions tried to do to Donald Trump in the first Trump administration. There is a parallel.
For a smart guy, that's not at all how Nixon falls. He falls because members of his own party aren't immune from facts and evidence and reality. But the scandal here, the story here, the news is that J.D. Vance actually said that out loud and thinks it's funny, called it a joke. But the point he's making isn't the point he thinks he's making. Richard Nixon resigning after being investigated for obstruction of justice, abuse of power, and contempt of Congress being a 12-hour news story says less about the gravity of Nixon's conduct and crimes and more about how overwhelming the current volume of corruption and criminality and weaponization we're seeing out of the White House today dwarfs it. And there's a reason they want to lower the bar so that no one thinks that Nixon would be held accountable in today's White House. There's a reason they want to normalize Nixon's conduct and theirs. Trump's relentless campaign to use the Department of Justice to target his perceived political enemies, his autocratic power grab, trying to undermine our democracy by taking over elections so he can cheat. And of course, the blatant exploitation of the White House by the Trump family for their personal financial gain. Trump's children have profited millions and millions from the crypto deals. They've benefited from federal contracts. And Trump himself is cashing in on the presidency like no president before him, profiting millions from stock trades, his family businesses, and gifts from political donors. So sure, JD, Richard Nixon's conduct really does pale in comparison to what we see Donald Trump doing. We're back with the executive director of Protect Democracy, Ian Basson, and the host of the Bulwark podcast, political analyst Tim Miller. Ian, your thoughts about this little peek behind the curtain of J.D. Vance's inner monologue?
Well, the first thing I couldn't help noticing is he's praising Richard Nixon right in front of a wall that says he's the Richard Nixon Foundation, which just reminded me that this guy is like the greatest suck-up to whoever he's in front of in history. I mean, I think if he sat down with Philip Morris, he'd basically say, oh, I really feel like back on getting some bad rap. One day he's going to come and he's the devil himself and say, I always really like the smell of sperm, and Skypes are really cool tools. I mean, so I had to sort of chuckle at just how good he is at sucking up to his audience. But here's the thing. I think what it reveals is that one of the most sophisticated and dangerous maneuvers that Donald Trump and now J.D. Vance have pulled off is dismantling the check that scandal has historically played in our politics. They've been very systematic about doing it. The way that scandal has historically worked is first, step one is there's discovery, right? Some entrepreneurial newspaper journalist, Woodward and Bernstein, discover something that's hidden and reveal it, and that becomes the shock. And they've dismantled that by simply doing all the corruption out in the open. The second move is after there's a reveal, then there's the narrative is told and explained to the electorate, to the American people, through a news media that had some shared reality, shared narrative, and that was trusted. But Trump has attacked the news media, called it fake news. It's also been completely fragmented in the modern era, and so the second step has basically been dismantled. Then the third step, after there was a reveal and a narrative, was that political actors were incentivized to hold the person committing the scandal accountable. But Trump has wielded power of the Republican Party with such mob-boss efficiency, and they have been so cowardly and capitulated that third step isn't working. And so having dismantled the scandal check, it reminds me of when the Ewoks in Return of the Jedi dismantled the shield so that they can attack the Death Star, except in this case, it's the bad guys who are the Ewoks, and Vance isn't as cute as the Ewok. But once the shield was down, then they can engage in rampant graft and corruption, which is what we're seeing. And that's really the most dangerous thing, that this really was just a victory lap over how successful they've been at dismantling the shield.
You ready for fire season? This year's wildfire season is forecasted to be one of the most active on record in the U.S. Wildfires are no longer a seasonal story. They're a year-round global reality, burning hotter, spreading faster.
But I think what is perceived in the moment as right is with the public the ultimate weakness. I mean, I think we saw that
he arrived at the promised land, and what he doesn't realize is he's like the Bruce Willis character in The Sixth Sense. He's already dead. He just doesn't know it yet.
Yeah,
he's politically dead.
Yeah.
His political star is nowhere. He has no political future. It's just not going to be revealed to him until the last scene of the movie when he tries to run in 2028. Because at the end of the day, you're right. The Trump political project has ultimately failed, and he is sinking in popularity, but disapproval is climbing by the day, and largely on the backs of these scandals. I think we all wish that there were a more immediate to ex machina where someone this corrupt, this unpopular, faced immediate consequence, right? People say, can't he just be impeached and removed? We know that's been tried multiple times. It hasn't worked. It unfortunately is going to be a much slower recalibration of our system and accountability than we wanted. But accountability is coming. It's coming in November. It's coming after that. The Trump political project is dead. J.D. Vance just doesn't know it yet.
Tim.
I'll have whatever he's having. I don't know what Ian's been doing today, but I'm down for some for this weekend. I'm less bullish than him, which is nice. It's in my nature to be more rain cloudy, and we'll see. I don't know what the future holds at JD. I do have a few nitpicks if I can. About what JD was saying about Nixon. I don't believe that Nixon is experiencing a renaissance. So, just to be a fact checker on that, I don't think that that's actually happening out there. Number two, I don't know that J.D. Vance actually knows what happened in Watergate, and I think that might be limiting his comments there somehow. This idea that the deep state took Nixon down, I guess I need to hear more what he means by that, because the deep state was working with Nixon on the crimes. The CIA helped Nixon. Nixon asked the CIA and the Nixon White House and the CIA to help them create, a cocktail lie that their attempt to break into the DNC and spy on their political opponents was some intelligence operation. So the CIA part of the deep state was on board. The Justice Department was on board. The Attorney General ended up going to jail. So I don't know who in the deep state was taking Nixon down, but it was the point of Watergate that it was the entire. There's many figures throughout the government that were working together on this crime and on this cover-up. That's why it was such a big story that lasted longer than 12 hours. Many people went to jail and were convicted of it. And as you mentioned in the lead-in, the people that took him down were members of their own party who had actual courage and were able to have standards and say something is wrong, and like what we've seen from this Republican Party. So, the thing for me, and I think the most notable thing, is just the blunt fact that the Vice President of the United States went on a stage yesterday and said, you know what, guys? Politicians doing crimes is not a big deal anymore. Not a big deal. People don't care about that. Like the president and the vice president, we can do whatever crimes we want. We're in a new era. It's not like the old days where people got all worried, where their politicians were corrupt. We've moved on from that in the Trump world. We're making America great again on our 250th anniversary now. It's all good. We can do as many crimes as we want. Nobody will care. It's an interesting bet. It's interesting that he's saying that just that bluntly. But that is what he said. He basically said that there were all these crimes that Nixon committed. That wouldn't be a big story anymore. I guess, at some level, we've seen that was somewhat true with Trump's election in 2024, but it seems like they're going to continue to test that prospect.
Okay, I have a million follow-up theories. So I think that I'm just taking a break, but I think that the deep state that he was attacking was the sword, right? Deep throat. I think he's obsessed with the fact that there was a link. But let's pull this thread, because I love this. We've just taken a break. Well, I'll be back on the other side with J.D. Vance's twisted Nixon renaissance. That's next.
Year and a half. Our president, Donald Trump, has turned the White House into a 24/7 corruption operation. This is a national crisis, and we should start acting like it. The president's goal is to engage in so much corruption, so much self-enrichment, to hand out so many favors to his friends, his family, and his political allies that it just becomes the pitter-patter of rain. It's normal, it's constant, it's never-ending. Trump's bet is that if there's a new story of corruption, of self-dealing, every few days, that the press will stop covering it, or the public will just stop paying attention. This moment is exceptional. It is a one-of-one moment. And if it becomes normal, if people stop being outraged
and what he is doing to enrich himself, then I fear there is no going back. The White House will just become a place to get rich.
So
We have the same thing with flour we got with sugar.
I
A
think
smaller
that
building
these
that'll
days
just
it's
produce
quite
flour
often
for me.
what leads the
I think
leaker.
so.
And there's a lot
Let's
of
look
scuttles.
for it.
They're super agitated, looking over
That's not it.
each other's shoulders with the new Maggie Swan, or Jonathan Swan, Maggie Haberman's book that is out. I don't know that J.D. Vance sees himself anywhere other than sort of as a reflection in right-wing media. And he seems like someone who goes back and watches all of his clips and his interviews. But the Chris Murphy point is, to me, where the friction with the Trump coalition is and the public. And you see a lot of the ascendant Democrats like Ossoff and Warnock making the point about corruption and the economy and morality. Ossoff detailing all of the individual schemes to get rich. And then you see how the corruption fails in terms of the incompetence of the reflecting pool. That was a corrupt Neve contract that turned the reflecting pool algae green, not American flag blue. I mean, where do you see the opportunity in countries in positions like ours sort of careening toward autocracy? You know, work out well for me and my family. Where are we sort of in that? I don't know, it feels like being in the car with someone.
So it produces flour and cakes and bread.
Intoxicated, but where are we on that ride?
Well, look, I mean, the tyrant's favorite tool since antiquity is to pit people against each other on the basis of religion or race or sexual orientation, to distract people by pinning blame on immigrants or the deep state, so that people are distracted while the tyrant is picking their pockets of money and power. And I think Senator Murphy detailed very well there how what's really going on behind all of the wild hand-waving and absurdities that you hear from Donald Trump and J.D. Vance and now the U.S. Supreme Court is that the American people are getting bilked of money and of power. And, you know, the good news that I tried to allude to before the break, and I love trying to convince Tim to be more upbeat, so I'm going to try it here, is that the American people are catching on. Right? I mean, the irony of J.D. Vance talking about how Watergate was nothing was that it was the post-Watergate 1974 election that saw the party out of power pick up a net gain of 48 seats. And I think we are heading towards something like that in November. You know, the Democratic generic ballot advantage right now is about somewhere between 6 and 7%. That's about where it was in 2018 when the Democrats picked up a net gain of 40 seats, except this time Donald Trump is twice as unpopular as he was in 2018. If you look at the Democrats' generic ballot advantage right now, the closest analogs in recent memory are 2006, 2008, 2018, and 2020. All years in which the Democrats did exceedingly well. So I think the Trump-Vance corruption is finally having the effect of stepping on the political rake that is about to hit them in the face, which is why you see Donald Trump pivoting so hard to trying to rig the election, because he knows that if the election is held on a free and fair basis, he and his party are toast. And so you're seeing now the efforts to try to tilt the playing field in the election. And here too, I think the good news is that the Hungarians showed that even with an autocrat tilting the playing field for 18 years, if you expose their corruption enough, you can win. Donald Trump hasn't been rigging it for 18 years. I think the American people see the corruption, and I think they're gonna answer it in November.
Yeah, I mean, looking around the world, it seems that if you're going to do the corruption, you have to keep the crime secret, and if you're going to do the crimes in public, you have to keep the corruption secret. And their mistake, if they have any sort of autocracy. You know, I don't know, if they look back at where they went wrong, if they are held accountable, it seems that trying to do the crime the criminal conduct and the enriching themselves in public in place of growing the economy or maintaining world peace may be where they went wrong. Is that a fair read, Ian?
Yeah, I mean, Trump ultimately had to consolidate power before becoming unpopular, right? That was the race. If he consolidated power before becoming unpopular, then he could hold on to power illegitimately. That's what autocrats do. There's a reason autocrats are autocrats, because if they were doing things that were legitimately popular, they wouldn't need to be autocrats, right? But they're doing things to enrich themselves that are not in the public interest. Weird. So they've got to consolidate power before they become unpopular, because once they become unpopular, it becomes harder to consolidate power. And Donald Trump has become unpopular before he finished consolidating power. Now, I don't want to suggest that this is all automatic at all. I don't want to suggest that the threats to the election aren't real. There's enormous work to be done, work that groups like ours that protect democracy and many of our allies in the democracy field are doing to make sure that Trump cannot tilt the playing field, to make sure that our election is free and fair, and voters get to cast their ballots and have their will honored. There's a lot of work that we all need to do that. It's not automatic. But the field right now looks good for the pro-democracy forces if we do our jobs.
All right, I'm going to ask both of you to stick around. Tim has to clap back up today. I'll show it to you on the other side of the break.
In my grain bins, probably not much.
Following yesterday's decision by the Supreme Court that was described in scathing terms by the liberal justices who dissented, who argued that the evidence was everywhere, that Trump's policies were racially motivated, the decision now basically allows the Trump administration to end temporary legal protection, which is what allows people from Haiti and Syria to be here. There was a flood of surprising but not shockingly racist react from the right. Stephen Miller's wife got in on the action. Her name's Katie Miller. She celebrated the ruling, reviving a conspiracy theory that Haitians parts of Ohio. And Megyn Kelly really outdid herself on her podcast, telling Haitians who would lose their temporary protected status to go home, get out. We know our country's better than yours. Tim, your clapback won the internet, won my heart, and I wonder if you think she's just enraptured by the permission structure the Supreme Court gives her to say these racist things, or this is who she always was, or if she's ignorant to all the contributions. I mean, just wanted you to react to it here.
It's hard to get in her head because some people just want to be nasty, and it's fun to be nasty. It's fun to be mean. We're all human. We all get it. I get a little thrill out of attacking Donald Trump's man boobs, like people like it. There's a dark part of all of us, and so maybe she just has fully given way to her dark soul and is using it to target helpless Haitians who came to the country because their country was in chaos and came here and worked and went to church and tried to make a life for themselves and their kids, and she wants to take out all her rage on them. I don't know. We do know it's at least somewhat performative, though, because she had a job at NBC where she was a completely different character just a few years ago, where she had a morning show where she had trans kids on and talked about the importance of diversity and all this stuff. So we know it's a character. We don't know exactly what motivates it or what is true. But, the Haitians, this stuff really gets to me. I live in New Orleans, as part of the clapback you referenced. It's like, and her risk goes on way longer than you played. And one of the things she talks about is how Haitians brought nothing to the culture that we built. I don't know what Megyn Kelly is adding to the culture, or they're lasting. I don't know what the we is in that. But Haitians have added a lot to the culture, and New Orleans we only have New Orleans because of Creole culture. Like New Orleans would be Mobile or Jackson or some other just perfectly fine city in the south of the Gulf Coast that is like a lot of other cities in the country. But because of that Creole culture, it is like one of the most special places in the country. I could go down the list of all the ways that, Basquiat or other Haitians have enriched us. And you don't have to be Basquiat. Like the person that's working at their job in Springfield, working hard, wanting to come to this country, wanting to give a life to their kids. Like, that person deserves dignity too. And these guys, for no reason, no purpose except for their own hatred, are now going to send them all back, try to ruin their lives, and they're going to rub their faces in the dirt while they do it. And it's sick. It's just sick.
I noted after the 2016 Trump win that these people are the worst winners in the history of human contests, right? Like, there's a sporting event, a political but why act the way they act? Ian Bassett, Kim Miller. Thank you, George Ford. Thank you. I think I've said it 8 times now. Thank you for spending some time with us today on all these stories. We really appreciate both of you. After the break, billionaire and Jeffrey Epstein associate Leon Black walked out of an oversight hearing after refusing to answer questions about his NDAs with women. We'll tell you about that next.
Orange just extended the biggest Independence Day sale for 12 more hours, guys. It's coupon orange beef tallow ball at the lowest price of the year. You need to hurry up because this Independence Day sale ends at midnight. Today only, Forge is 50% off, and you can use code USA20 for an extra 20% off at checkout. This is your last chance to get Forge at this price. This was just 2 months ago, looking tired, old, dry, and completely worn out. And now look at me, sharper face, more rested eyes, skin that actually looks alive again. No wonder I was invisible to women before. My face made me look exhausted, weak, and past my prime. But now, women notice me again. I look younger, sharper, more confident, and more like the man I used to be. This is the power of Forge Beef Tallow Balm I've been telling you about for months. So hurry
Can't think of a
up,
better
because
name.
every time they run a sale this big, jars sell out
Works for me.
extremely fast. Tap below, use code USA20, and grab yours before the sale disappears.
I was lying on the grass a Sunday morning of last week, indulging in myself. I know it's up for me. Making sure I'm not in too deep. If you still
Could have got some follow from there. Not a big deal. I sometimes forget about that. No big deal. We're about ready to jump into January, I think. We've got to rush through the rest of December.
Georgia Senate delegation tonight. That's Senator John Hassan is going to be during this hour. Obviously, it's running a election. It's a tough one, as Georgia always is. So we'll be hearing from him about that. We'll also get the latest numbers from Al Felch later in the hour about what's happening on election night.
So interesting. I mean, I just spoke with Senator Warnock about the fact that Republicans didn't move forward with redistricting, but they could next year. Elections have consequences, so important for people to remember. But I'll be looking forward to watching your convo with his colleague from Georgia, shall we say.
Thanks, Jen.
Thanks, Lawrence.
Well, Donald Trump has scored his lowest job approval rating yet in a Reuters poll at 34%. And we have what could be another measure of Donald Trump's unpopularity and discipline. Baby names. Donald is the new Adolf. The baby name Donald has hit its lowest point in popularity in American history, according to Social Security Administration data reviewed by the website Notice News of the United States. The federal agency received fewer than 400 Social Security card applications for babies to baby Donalds last year, making Donald the nation's 690th most popular baby name amid Trump's return to the White House for a second term. Less than 400 babies out of 3.6 million babies born last year will have to live with the name Donald, which they might want to change after taking elementary school history classes. More people named their babies Lawrence, a name I would not wish on anyone, than Donald. More babies
were actually named Princeton last year. The Donald Princeton, a name I've never heard for anything other than a town in New Jersey, and, oh yeah, a university. Adolf dropped rather dramatically in popularity after Adolf Hitler executed 6 million Jewish people in death camps while he was losing World War II before he took his own life. And we learned last night from the reporting of Maggie Haberman and Jonathan Swan and their new book, Regime Change, Inside the Imperial Presidency of Donald Trump, that Donald Trump happily compares himself to Adolf Hitler because a caddy for a retired professional golfer wrote an assessment of the most powerful people in history in which the caddy concluded Donald Trump is more powerful than Adolf Hitler was, or Joseph Stalin, or any of the other mass murdering, hateful, sociopathic dictators in history. And Donald Trump is proud of that. Donald Trump is so proud to be compared to Adolf Hitler that he actually gave that document written by the caddy to Maggie Haberman and Jonathan Swan on page 412 of their book. The evident pleasure Trump took in the company of Mao, Hitler, and Stalin. He drew no distinction between those who built and those who destroyed, between those who liberated and those who enslaved. What mattered was that they had huge power and that he had more. It is all in their remarkable book, which serves as documented confirmation for what many of you have assumed is happening in the Trump White House. Stupidity, impulsivity, no homework, and no one able to stand in the way to save the world from Donald Trump. With a new poll showing only 24% think Donald Trump's war with Iran was worth the costs, and just 23% think the United States is now in a stronger position with Iran compared to its position before the war. But even those people are not naming their babies Donald. At 7:20 a.m. today, Donald Trump, who has lied about his war in Iran every day of that war, posted something on social media that, just based on Donald Trump's past record alone, is probably not entirely true. And so we will approach this with the standard that Maggie Haberman and Jonathan Swan of the New York Times told Jon Stewart they use for statements from the Trump White House.
I take Blue Chew Gold if you're not ready for hard results and a great night. Seriously, you get blood flow, arousal, and connection. All of that in this little gold package. They don't call this the best 4-in-1 for nothing. But man, once you're ready for solid results, head over to BlueChew.com and get the quarterly plan. Oh yeah, you get 1 month free.
Be right back. Who's ringing the bell at this hour? Hey, what can I do for you?
I'm looking for Jack Fraser.
Okay, regarding what?
It's just business.
Okay, just wait right there. I'll go get him.
White House. And so, on the assumption that this is false until proven otherwise, this is what Donald Trump posted at 7:20 a.m. today. Iran has fully and completely agreed to highest level nuclear inspections long into the future. Infinity, 3 exclamation points. This will ensure nuclear honesty. If they did not agree to this, there would be no further negotiations. Based on this and other major concessions being made by Iran, I have agreed to allow the Hormuz Strait to remain open with no further naval blockade. However, all ships are remaining in place should it be necessary to reinstitute the blockade, which seems at this point highly unlikely. Secretary of State John Kerry, in the most important diplomatic achievement of the 21st century, obtained an agreement with Iran on behalf of President Obama to allow what Donald Trump would clumsily call the highest level of nuclear inspections in Iran. And when Donald Trump came into office for the first time, he said that that wasn't good enough. Inspections anywhere in Iran at any time just were not good enough. And so Donald Trump voided that agreement with Iran, policed by the United States and 5 other countries and the International Atomic Energy Agency. It wasn't good enough when John Kerry and President Obama obtained that agreement. But now Donald Trump says it's good enough. Any kind of inspections are good enough. Any promise of inspections. The trouble is, Iran says they've promised nothing, they've agreed to nothing about inspections. But Iran says what Donald Trump is saying is not true. The New York Times reports Iranian officials said on Tuesday that their country did not make any such commitment. In fact, they said the matter was barely discussed. Spokesman for Iran's foreign ministry said there was no plan to invite inspectors to nuclear sites that were hit by U.S. and Israeli airstrikes. So, not only does the Trump team not have any way of finding out where Iran's nuclear material might be, they don't even know where the nuclear inspectors are. Go to the Republican senators' weekly working lunch tomorrow in a private room just off the Senate floor, where reporters are never invited in. And so we won't know for sure if Donald Trump runs into the kind of resistance tomorrow that some Republican senators are promising.
I need to know why we've actually even relieved Iran of sanctions that date back to pre-JCPOA. I need to understand how this escrow account works. It's going to have roughly $10 billion coming in, where literally a U.S. refiner can legally now purchase Iranian oil, I guess if it's a lower price than some other jurisdiction. I need to understand why that's a wise strategy before the Iranians have actually signed up to some fairly stringent requirements. I think they're probably going to get $40-50 billion in revenue, and this is not likely to end the way the president wants it to. So giving them a lot before they actually demonstrate they're negotiating in good faith is concerning to me.
Are you talking about the oil sanctions being eased right now?
Yeah, I mean, my gosh, we're back to pre-JCPOA relief on oil sanctions. And so I'm just saying, maybe the president's just got more of a trusting vibe with these folks. I think they're stringing them along.
Yesterday, Republican Senator Tim Sheehy put it another way. He said that he thinks Iran has now made Donald Trump the victim of Iran's rope-a-dope strategy.
What we're seeing now is what the rope-a-dope they usually perform, which is buy time, try to lead us along till hopefully President Trump and this team's out of office and they can re-up their campaign.
Someone on the senator's staff should remind Senator Sheehy that the World Heavyweight Championship boxer Muhammad Ali coined the phrase rope-a-dope to describe what he was doing to his opponent in the boxing ring. Muhammad Ali's opponent was the dope in the rope-a-dope. And so, Republican Senator Sheehy just made Donald Trump Iran's dope. Leading off our discussion tonight is retired U.S. Navy Rear Admiral and former White House National Security Communications Advisor John Kirby. He is now the director of the University of Chicago's Institute of Politics and an MS now National Security Analyst. Admiral Kirby, thank you very much for joining us tonight. It's always so important to be able to hear your perspective on this. What do you make of where things appear to stand tonight?
Very unclear. As you can tell from your opening and from the comments that have been made both by Iranian officials and by American officials, it seems like both sides are still pretty far apart. Now look, I mean, to be fair, we've been through this before. I saw it happen when I was with Secretary Kerry in the JCPOA negotiations. The Iranians will say things publicly and yet privately at the table be singing a different tune. And so we have to allow for the fact that that could be happening right now. But the maximalist positions that both have been taking consistently indicate to me that there's still a long way to go to get to any tangible outcomes here in terms of commitments and concessions by the Iranians that will actually meet our national security interests. In the meantime, I'm concerned, as so many senators are, that we are making concessions tangibly, effectively, and publicly to Iran in terms of sanctions relief right now. That it will be hard to rein back in should the Iranians not meet their commitments.
Yeah, the point that Senator Tillis is making seems to be so important at this stage. Iran has, at this stage, actually done nothing, but they've already received a great deal in terms of concessions from Donald Trump.
The only thing I could say that they've done, and we have to put a caveat on this too, is the Strait of Hormuz is technically open. They are not firing drones or missiles at ships as we speak. That said, the traffic going through the strait is still just a trickle compared to it once was. But again, we don't think, and they should never have any control over traffic in the Strait of Hormuz. That's an international waterway. Freedom of the seas can't just be for whales and icebergs. It has to be for everybody. So the one concession we've gotten is that the strait's open for traffic, but even then, it's very measured, and Iran still has a trigger, an ability to limit that flow should they want. So you're right. There's not been a lot conceded by Iran so far. I do think it's important to remember we're early in this process. We'll see where it goes. But right now, it appears as the United States is doing more conceding than Iran is doing.
Certainly in the Obama administration, any kind of relief of any aspect of sanctions or anything else was conditioned upon Iran actually formally agreeing to something or actually doing something. This seems to be a concede first, figure it out later approach.
Yeah, I think there's some truth to that, Lawrence. What I suspect the American side will tell you is, well, they've opened up the strait, they're not harassing traffic, so we're offering some sanctions relief. But again, we have to keep the open of the Strait of Hormuz in some context here. The other thing that's interesting is the sanctions relief they're offering, the unfreezing of assets. They are using the same arguments that President Obama used and President Biden used when we likewise unfroze some assets, and we were talking about how they were going to be monitored, how they were going to be delivered. But when it was done by Democratic administrations, and I was there for both times, the Republican side was howling quite a bit about the fungibility of funds and assets, and how even if you can control those assets and where they go into Iran will then be freed up to spend other money on supporting terror. And we're not hearing that same hue and cry from the Republican side of the aisle, which I find rather ironic.
Admiral John Kirby, thank
Sorry,
you very
it's
much
a
for starting off our coverage.
It's not about irony, it's about
breaking
hypocrisy.
news in the big board with Aladelchi. What do we have?
We've got
Come on,
New
damn it.
York 12.
Fucking thing out of the goddamn
middle of Manhattan. 85% of the vote is in. The Associated Press is projecting that Micah Lasher will be the Democratic candidate. Of course, Lawrence, as you know, in these very liberal districts, the Democratic candidate will likely be the next for Congress from the 12th district. This is a tight race between Alex Boris and Micah Lasher. Most people don't know these names, but Jack Kennedy Schlossberg was the candidate that some people thought might have an edge here. He's only got 11% of the vote. George Conway, former Republican turned Trump antagonist, has 6% of the vote. So that is decided. Several other districts in New York have been decided. As you saw, Dan Goldman defeated by Brad Lander in New York 10. Claire Valdez defeating Antonio Reynoso. This was a vacant district, so there was not an incumbent. This was Nydia Velazquez's district. And this one we have not called yet. This is District 13. This is Daria Liza Avila Chevalier, also backed by Zoran Mamdani, challenging Adriano Espaillat, long-term incumbent dean of sort of Latino politics, head of the Congressional Hispanic Caucus. 86% of the vote in right now. She's taking a lead. She's got a lead of 2,000 votes. That's because most of the vote coming in now is day of vote. Espaillat was leading in the vote that had already been cast in the day of vote. She seems to be ahead, but again, we are unable to project this shape yet. So of the three Mamdani-backed candidates in New York, two have won so far, and the first incumbent has gone down to an outside challenger in the Democratic Party.
Ali, thank you. We'll be watching more as the evening goes on. And coming up, we have more breaking news. Another Trump loss in federal court tonight. Senator Sheldon Whitehouse will join us next.
Your goal, form sets and runs to score points. On your turn, draw a card, lay down melds, and discard to end.
I'll be right back.
First player to reach 500 points wins.
Breaking news tonight, a federal judge in California has issued an order blocking Donald Trump's immigration officers from making arrests inside immigration courts anywhere in the country. In U.S. District Judge P. Casey Fitt's 71-page ruling, the judge writes, quote, "For 80 years, Congress has commanded federal agencies to think before they act. That instruction, codified in the Administrative Procedures Act, does not require an agency to make the choice that a reviewing court might deem preferable, but it demands that an agency at least provide sound reasons for following its chosen course. It is now clear that the lack of a connection between ICE's stated rationales for the 2025 courthouse arrest policies and the expansion of arrests at immigration courthouses results not from merely unreasoned decision-making, but a complete lack of decision-making." And the New York Times reports, quote, "The ruling came in a class action lawsuit challenging the Immigration and Customs Enforcement Agency and the Executive Office for Immigration Review, which is part of the Justice Department, over a surge in immigration-related arrests at courthouses and increasingly long detention of immigrants in ICE facilities intended for brief periods." And joining our coverage now is Democratic Senator Sheldon Whitehouse of Rhode Island, the top Democrat in the Environment Public Works Committee. He also serves on the Senate Finance Committee and the Senate Judiciary Committee. Senator, what is your reaction to this breaking news about the arrests that were happening in these courthouses?
Well, courthouses are supposed to be sort of protected places. But this has been going on for a while with ICE and CBP. We had an incident in Rhode Island where they had agreed not to operate in the courthouse, and there was a court rule that you can't take photographs in the courthouse, a rule for everyone. And despite the agreement, agents came in to operate in the courthouse. Despite the rule, they started taking pictures. They were such bozos that they were surveilling a high school intern while thinking they were looking for some 30-year-old guy. And then the kid was nervous and went to the judge he was interning for. The judge walked him out to his car to drive him back to high school, at which point the agents went at the judge by way of genius clue behavior. He was parked in a judge's only parking spot, and they didn't seem to figure out that he was a judge, so they threatened to smash his windows and drag the kid out of the car, a judge, if he didn't turn over this high schooler. Eventually they knew that they were wrong. They detained the kid for an hour. But this kind of behavior is what leads judges to get completely fed up with this misbehavior smack bang in their courthouses. So it really comes as no surprise when you look at their track record of violating an agreement, breaking the rules of the court, being idiotic about not telling a 19-year-old from a 30-year-old, not figuring out that a judge is a judge parked in a judge's only spot and then F-bombing and threatening to smash the judge's car windows. Like, who does that? So I'm not surprised.
So the Senate voted again to limit Donald Trump's ability to wage war in Iran. This time 50 senators were enough to get 4 Republicans.
I'm really wanting to live stream
on this
Star Wars Empire War on my other channel, so I think I'm going to go ahead and call this quits for right now.
At least he's scheduled to meet with Republican senators in there.
And fertilizer there. Other than that, it looks
where when you listen to Senator Tillis,
okay, so
could be running into some real resistance.
I'm going to go ahead and call her quits.
Where he is in his some public negotiating with Iran, where Iran already seems to be allowed all.
I'm Corky Duke, CorkyDuke.com is my website. Corky Duke Farminator, come with me if you want as well. This is Farming Simulator 22. It's 7:01, January 1st. Farming Simulator 22, Prairie Farm, Michigan 4X. Aunt B Grain Farm. Thanks for watching, and we will see y'all later. Y'all take care. Bye.